the Christian journey is a journey of faith. But one thing you need to know again is that it is a race that needs endurance. And the race comes with a price. That's what the writer of Hebrew communicates to us in Hebrews chapter 12, verses 1 and 2. Meet me there as I read with you the text. The writer of Hebrews says, "Therefore, since we also have such a large cloud of witnesses surrounding us, let us lay aside every hindrance and the sin that so easily ensnares us. Let us run with endurance the race that lies before us, keeping our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and the perfecter of our faith. For the joy that lay before him, he endured the cross, despising the shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God." And so, the writer of Hebrew, opening his appeal is based on the prior exposition of the faithfulness among the people of God. He exhorts his listeners by citing from Proverbs chapter 3, verses 11 and 12, which he actually cited in that same chapter 12 of Hebrew, verses 5 and 6. He says, "My son, do not regard lightly the discipline of the Lord, nor be weary when reproved by him." The writer of Hebrews goes on to illustrate the significance of that fatherly discipline in verses 7 to 10. But here, he began by saying that you have been surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses. Cloud is a common way in Greek literature of metaphorically referring to a group of people. The models of faith in chapter 11 are included in this group of people that the writer of Hebrews is talking about. Okay, so if you look at verse 2 of chapter 11, "For by it the people of old receive their commendation," referring to the group of people, the cloud. And in verse 39 of chapter 11, he says, "And all these, though commended through their faith, did not receive what was promised," making reference to a cloud, a group of people who are part of the list of the heroes of faith. So he says, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, he said, let us run, referring to a kind of a foot race. And foot race was one of the longest and the most significant events in the Greek games. And so Paul is using that to be able to communicate in a very relevant and contextually presentable way to his recipients. Okay, so if you look at how Paul made that presentation, you can also make reference to Hebrews chapter 6, verse 12, where he says the reason why we need to run is so that you may not be sluggish, but you might be imitators of those who have gone ahead of you, of those who through faith and patience inherit the promises that were made. And if you go to 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 7, Paul gave his own spiritual autobiography, and he said that I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. He has finished the race. He ran the race and was able to get to the finish line. Okay, so how did Paul actually do that? So that this would help you as you're listening to me today. Now, there are two ways that Paul did that. Number one, Paul ran the race by ultimately, which is really important for a Christian today, fixing his eyes on Jesus. He fixed his eyes on Jesus. Although Hebrews chapter 11, with the list of the heroes of faith who are the cloud of witnesses, cheering us as believers as we run the race, because they have gone ahead of us, and so we can look at them and have a motivation for the race. Although Hebrews 11 has given us that list, but Jesus is ultimately our focus in this race. It should be your focus in this race. In light of the foot race metaphor, the idea here might be that Jesus, who pioneered the cause of our faith, remember the text tells us he's the author and the finisher of our faith, or the pioneer and the perfecter of our faith. He is the pioneer of that faith, so that he is our example. And he is awaiting believers at the finish line. So as you run the race, he is right at the finish line. The moment you get to the finish line, he's going to welcome you for running the race successfully. And there is a joy that is set before us, because there is a price that is kept. Okay, so the joy that was set before Christ, it's that joy that pushes him, motivates him to run the race. Okay, that's the thing. And Josephus, one of the Greek Jewish historians, help us understand what that phrase means. The joy that was set before him, prizes often were set before athletes to provide motivation. So that's the motivation. And so Jesus had to endure the cross, which provides for you and I, believers in Christ Jesus, the paradigm that we need, so that we'll be able to endure the suffering that comes in the Christian race and the shame that comes along with it. But knowing fully that we would run the race with endurance, fixing our eyes on Jesus Christ, and knowing fully that he's waiting for us at the finish line to welcome us. Are you running to be welcomed by Jesus? Run the race, so you'll be able to say like Paul, I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. And there awaits me the crown of righteousness. Thank you for being a part of this devotion. Be strong and be courageous.